Welcome everybody back to my channel. Today we'll be talking about the casual death of the local Yu-Gi-Oh scene. What does that mean and how can there be remedies to fix it? At the competitive level, Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't seem to be in any peril. YCSs are getting bigger and bigger, regionals still turn out for 500 people plus, and cards are being sold. So it's kind of looking like at the local game store level. If you are aware of what Yu-Gi-Oh is, you constantly do know what is going on at your local scene. Uh, some you'll actively read stories online of saying, I can't go to locals. My local game store that has Yu-Gi-Oh and supports it is over an hour away, while there being 3 other game stores in their area within about 15 minutes. This is the problem that I am addressing here. You looking at the local Yu-Gi-Oh scene, not as the Yu-Gi-Oh scene entirely. With stuff like Master Duel and other third-party applications, Yu-Gi-Oh is alive and well for a lot of people. It's just the local environment is seemingly fading away. Here there is going to be 3 parts that are going to enable that. That is going to tell the story of the death of it. Number one, the players and the kind of atmosphere they are showing and attributing to new players and to people that are in their community. Number two is Konami itself. This is talking more about the products and promotional material. And number three, and kind of the most important factor, is the story themselves. These are very, very integral pieces to see where the Yu-Gi-Oh scene goes forward and how it does collapse. So bear with me, this could be a longer video. So let's just start with the players. Uh, the first thing that I really want to talk about is that the players have to show up to these local events. Say your local card shop does have a Yu-Gi-Oh night, it has locals for Yu-Gi-Oh. That is great and everybody wants that there. You have to show up. You can't just say, oh, well, they have it and I will show up occasionally. And this isn't, and I'm not saying you have to show up every week, but you do have to be a regular once every 2 weeks. It'd be great if you showed up every week because now you are starting to build a community, which is another point that I want to make. The players have to build a community. I am part of a couple local game stores. Within that, there is a Discord channel with the people that play at these game stores. This is what keeps us connected and keeps us gaining friendships and building upon those friendships. But showing up is the first step. Being able to play. And you were saying that uh you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh but you don't show up and you just play Master Duel or you play a third-party simulator like Dueling Book or YuGiOh Omega, it does kind of hinder you. With that being said, just show up. And if you do show up, now this goes to the other players. Say if you're the new player to the locals, this now goes to the next players. These, you have to be welcoming to the newcomers. This is if somebody is new to the area or even new to Yu-Gi-Oh. You can't just look at them and be kind of standoffish. You have to be welcoming and able to talk to them. If they are not up to the same level of duelist as you're accustomed to, or even to the point of they're just brand new to the game, you must kind of play down to their level for a little bit. Kind of, hey, I know you're learning, or I know you're new, or I know that you might be new to this certain deck. I know my deck in and out. I'm not going to go full bore on you and just kind of shut you out. This goes for both welcoming a community and for new players. Welcoming, you must be able to talk to the other person, engage in conversation, ask them what they like outside of rounds or even during the rounds. A lot of people see this as taboo of table talking during the game. But you really should engage in that. That really shows people kind of what the duelists they are, and if you even want to engage with them. I really like talking about. I really like talking during games. And if the player does not, then I don't necessarily like to hang out with them afterwards. Because they're taking the game a little bit too seriously. At the end of the day, the game is supposed to be fun. But if you do like the game to be very, very competitive, there is players like that at your game store. And you must be welcoming to that openness and competitiveness nature, both sides, if you're brand new to the local community or if you have been established there. The ability to help new players learn their combos and their decks is very, very vital as well. Bringing in new players to Yu-Gi-Oh is something that is very, very hard. Yu-Gi-Oh is a steep learning curve, and the fact that we do not have a rotation that really rewards players with past knowledge when new decks come out. This such as uh, with the Draco Tail engine, going with these old school I should say branded combos, or something like Vanquish Soul being able to play with the majority of its life being relegated to rogue tables, but with the canine cards showing up and people having knowledge of what the Vanquish Soul cards do, going back and incorporating them. This is where Yu-Gi-Oh kind of is good and bad. It's good to players that have been around for a long time. However, it's bad for newcomers. So if you are in the community already and a new player comes in and kind of wants to learn their deck, actively try to help them and give them positive tips, not try to critique them or belittle them and their ideas. So if somebody comes up playing their Dark Magician deck and they ask you how do you improve the Dark Magician deck, don't just flat out say, hey, don't play Dark Magician, play X, Y, or Z, the best deck in the format. Instead of doing that, you say, hey, this is the best way to play Dark Magician. Right now is probably with the Primite build. However, you just constantly help them out with the deck tips, and you suggest that, hey, maybe you shouldn't play Dark Magician yet until the future when the new support comes out, and try to learn other decks. This is a kind of a community aspect that people don't necessarily see all that often. This is where the players really come into effect, that they have to show up. And there is going to be another little tidbit about the players once we go and talk about the game store as well. But let's move on to the next point here that will continue growing that local Yu-Gi-Oh scene. That's Konami itself. Konami is the company that runs the TCG side of things, that runs the TCG and the OCG card pool, I should say, for Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is owned by multiple different companies, but the card game is licensed to Konami. Konami has its problems, a lot of people say, with their ban list, that they either take too long to come out or they don't hit the proper cards. My problem with Konami is more focused on the product and promotional here. Let's start with the product quality. The product quality here is very, very important. When we take a look at 2025, really looking back at it, only about 2 sets really made an impactful difference and last on the shelves. These 2 sets are Maze of the Master and Justice Hunters. Everything else kind of lagged behind. And I know a lot of people might say that and be like, well, there was so impactful sets, such as Supreme Darkness with the release of Primite Ether Barrel, and with Alan with Alliance Insight, I should say, with the introduction of the new Adagnister support and Malice White Rabbit. However, looking at those sets with a lens, most of the cards in them are super and lower. You look at something like Alan, who padded out and completed the archetype that you saw in Supreme Darkness of TCG exclusive Mitsurugi. The card that completed it was a super rare, and you needed 3 of it, but being a super rare meant that it was under $1 on the resale market. That is bad for quality, for product quality. You were coming out with these blockbuster quality cards, putting them very low rarity, so it's easy to pull, which is a good thing. However, for the products being on the shelf, you don't have that rebuyability because you can't get them in the luxury rares. You can't get the highest rarity of a Habakiri, which is one of the strongest cards in recent memory for Yu-Gi-Oh, is just super. You can't get it higher, so once you get your 3 supers, what's the point of pulling more cards out of that? Maybe you wanted to play Malice, or you wanted to get Star Ryziel. However, Star Ryziel was a one of, and Malice, sure, that one you have a little bit more credence to, making the Malice main deck monster a 3 of and a secret rare, and the new Adagnister, allied code Adagnister boss monster being an ultra, but the other cards being supers, except I believe backup secretary being an ultra as well, but them being very low rarity made them very cheap on the secondary market and very much easier to pull in the packs. Paired that up with the next set coming out of Duelist Advance with a lackluster at the time TCG exclusive archetype RB and a new lore archetype that is also at the time lackluster in the Archmage archetype, kind of felt very rough. You had new automat support, which was supposed to do with what the Ignister stuff did with Malice to the automats would do to Ryziel, and it did to an extent, but not as great as it was. There was no secret rares for the Ryziel in this. The cards that you needed were all ultra or lower in this set. You had the Lunalite support in this set, which was also just commons. And Lunalite became a menace in the competitive play. You look at these side sets as well. Stuff like the Battles of Legend Monsters Mayhem, which every card in it is an ultra. That pulling one box would net you everything you wanted to play a new supported archetype, such as Orcus getting the new support and Gem Knights getting the new support. Being able to play those archetypes basically fresh out of the box, out of one box, kind of sucked. And without having the chase card of the last year's Battle of Legend with Dragon Master Magia, you are kind of at a loss for why this is on your shelf. Quarter Century Bonanza and Stampede were really good sets and fun to open, so they didn't last long, but the reprints in them weren't necessarily asked for, and I say that with quotations because obviously in the last Quarter Century, I believe that was Bonanza, that was voted on some of the Quarter Centuries, so people did ask for them. However, it was cards like Infernity Archfiends and stuff such as yes, you had reprints of Diabellstar, but that was just then reprinted a month later in the tins. You had reprints of Mulcharmy Fuelos, which was a great reprint, but it was reprinted to hell and back, so it made it very, very cheap to buy. At one point, them being well over $50 on the secondary market, now sitting at around $10. The sets kind of fell off. Even Maze of the Masters, which I said was a really good set, it does kind of just sit on the shelf, but it is a set that people will actively open, and it is a new player friendly set. These are the problems that you look at Konami. How I think you can remedy that is that consolidating these sets. Instead of releasing like 9 to 10 sets a year at some points, and I am over exaggerating a little bit, but instead of releasing all of these sets, like the Battles of Legend, the Maze sets, the mainline sets, the two deck builder sets that are in each year primarily has two deck builder sets, one in the summer, one in the winter, and around four to six mainline sets, and 2 to 3 side sets per year, not including tins and structure decks. You creating so much pack filler in these sets that kind of seem lackluster. With the advent of Genesis format, you're seeing now a lot of new styles come across all these pack fillers. However, it doesn't feel good opening something like Duelist Advance or Supreme Darkness. And coming up to the next set that is, as of recording, Burst Protocol, seems to kind of buck that trend, where every single card in it is good for the most part, except for the TCG exclusive of GNX, which kind of seems a little lackluster. But every single card from the low end to the high end supports older archetypes, have new archetype, and is really well received. And is seemingly really well received, I should say. But that is the outlier. When you have a set like Burst Protocol and you have a set like Infinite Forbidden, you will have the sets like Duelist Advance and Alliance Insight and Supreme Darkness. These are not the greatest sets. Even if you look back even before that, the other two Maze sets were lackluster. The other deck builder sets were lackluster. These are the problems with the Yu-Gi-Oh card quality, in the product quality, I should say, that there is low rarity cards that the people want, high rarity cards of the cards that nobody wants, and the fact that they're releasing so many products in such a short amount of time instead of just consolidating them into much fewer products. Also, a major problem in the product quality is a bunch of printing errors. You open up the most recent Yu-Gi-Oh set as of recording, which is Phantom Revengers, there is massive printing issues in North America, with cards being cut, print lines being shown, and all over the place, just misrepresentative things, and even to the point where the cards become illegal to play. These all kind of wrap together with Konami and making people not want to buy these sets. And they're not being new player friendly products. I said that the Maze sets are generally new player friendly products because they do release full archetypes in it. The most recent one, Maze of the Master, released full archetypes of a older archetype of Sword Soul. Released everything you needed to play Sword Soul in that set. It also released everything you needed to play for the new completed Clear World archetype and the new completed Allure Queen archetype, while also having everything you need at the higher end for the Tachyon sets and for Tomb Keeper, or colloquial known as Odeon set. That's a very good new player friendly product. However, the problem is it didn't have these staples that every deck needs. The stuff such as Ash Blossom, the stuff as Nibiru, or Imperms, Effect Veilers, or the Charmies. However, they did release a new product that was new player friendly a few weeks before that with the Blue Eyes Structure deck. The Blue Eyes Structure deck is amazing. I think is the universally the best product of 2025. Buying 3 of those structure decks at about $13 a piece, so spending around $40 in total, you'll have a fully complete, ready to go to locals and compete deck with Blue Eyes, with the hand traps you needed as effect veilers, Nibiru's, Imperms, and Ash Blossoms, along with your copy of Called by the Grave to combat them, your Blue Eyes, and the new Blue Eyes supports with Maiden with Eyes of, I believe it was just Maiden of White, and your play sets of Sage with Eyes of Blue, and the new spell and trap card, the new spell cards and the new trap card, along with the new synchro monsters. This product was really, really good. And even when you go forward in the year, when you had the Chronicles deck with the branded archetype, it was very, very good. But that one was more geared towards more experienced players. But it did have good staples in it, so it was a good new player friendly product. But before that, there wasn't really products like these. Even like I said, the Maze sets prior to Maze of the Master, they were lackluster, even on the new player set. I remember opening up Maze, what was it? Maze of Memories, the first Maze set, which had the Gate Guardian stuff in it. The Gate Guardian, the highest rarity was super, so you could easily pull everything you need for Gate Guardian. However, you didn't have Elemental Hero Prisma and a Hero Lives, which really make that deck take off, or Magician's Souls, which didn't take that deck to the heights that it needed to. Or even Swords, 7 Swords, which is banish a level 7 in hand to draw 2 cards. The deck really needs you to have the Gate Guardian pieces in rotation. But other than that, you had at the low rarity of, how I said, with the Allure Queens and the Clear World archetypes and the Sword Soul, you had the Blackluster Soldier ritual stuff. But it was very rough. It was hard to pull them because they chocked it full of a lot of other things that were just randomly inserted. And with these products not having these staple cards in them, it's hard to sell them to new players, because then these new players would have to buy other products or look for somebody to trade. And with people trading, you could potentially get scammed out of trades. Say you need your Ash Blossoms. A guy has an extra set of Ash Blossoms. Hey, what are you looking for those Ash Blossoms? And the guy says, how much do you want them? Like, how much do you need them? Oh, you need them really bad. Okay, well, I'm going to say, I'm going to upcharge you, or I want higher trade value for what Ash Blossom is worth. This is the problem with a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh products of not being player friendly. New player friendly, I should say. It rewards players that have been around for a while, but doesn't reward new players. My suggestion to kind of mitigate this is release more structure decks like the Blue Eye structure deck. Release about 2 structure decks a year, and I say release them in pairs. So if we take last year's Blue Eye structure deck, for example, they should have also released a Dark Magician structure deck to go along with it, to capitalize on Yugi and Kaiba's ace monsters, and with the new Dark Magician support that was already announced, that is coming out in the most recent Maze set, Maze of Muertos, you could have easily put it into their own structure deck and kind of saw competitive viability for both of these decks. And kind of going back and forth with new players, new or returning players, seeing them both on the shelves at the same time. They can go grab their friend, they buy 3 of each, and can play with all the staples they would need. That's kind of where I think the product line should really go. Instead of releasing more and more side sets, you should release more and more structure decks. And going forward, you can release one year being more DM, the next year being GX inspired, the next year being 5Ds, and then Zexal and Arc 5 I should say, and then Vrains, and then recycle all the way through. that I think would be very fun and interesting. Next, we have the promotional materials that Konami puts out. This really looks at shows, is what I want to talk about. This, without having a Yu-Gi-Oh show that is currently running, it's hard to get newer players to come in because Yu-Gi-Oh is running off of the old shows even now. Most players in the Yu-Gi-Oh community have watched the show. Whether that is like me, who watched the original run of Duel Monsters, or people that are younger than me that watch 5Ds, or younger even then that watched Zexal. I just skipped over GX, that's my bad. But you see where I'm going. They had that continuity. But now there isn't a show out. And that hurts the addition of new players and the excitement of playing the game. I suggest two things though. Because you can't really do the show anymore. The combos in modern Yu-Gi-Oh is too fast. There's too many moving parts to kind of show in an old school Yugi versus Kaiba or Yusei versus Jack kind of duel. Because there is so many cards going in and out activating, it kind of is hard to animate that. Imagine you are watching a modern Yu-Gi-Oh anime, and the guy says, I activate Habakiri from hand. How many more steps do you have to go and show this? You are basically shutting out the opponent and kind of bringing an insurmountable board, which makes it not a fun experience to watch. So, I think they should expand more on the Chronicles series. The Chronicles series is promotional material that Konami has been putting out about the story of the cards on themselves. Expanding, but they're being only from 3 to 6 minutes long. I'd say expand these to about 20-minute episodes. Expand them from only about 5 to 6 of these shorts to about 10 of these episodes. Kind of bouncing around the lore. Whether that's if Konami as an entire entity doesn't want that, maybe the TCG side of things say, hey, why not just do TCG exclusives? Think about it. You're running Burning Abyss and you really like that deck. Why not create a show, hire some animators to create a show about the Burning Abyss, and you're basically just telling Dante's Inferno with it. I think it is very fun and cool and interesting on that. And you can even do that expanded into the Mimighoul archetype and RBs, and now we're going to see with the G and the X. You can kind of expand and expand and expand on these formats and the ideas of what these decks do. Or you could do a pseudo docu series centered around the top players of the TCG or the OCG as well. You can kind of split it, but the OCG is kind of not seeing a loss of the Yu-Gi-Oh casual. It's primarily the TCG aspect, where you follow around the top players of the current set, which is kind of like the UDS series, but you follow them around in their day-to-day life as kind of this docu-series and showing them how they prepare for YCS's and other big events. However, this does pose a lot of problems for Konami because not being available for every card, they would have to go on to third-party sites that aren't licensed by Konami, which is a no-no to kind of work with the cards and see the combos and practice them out. So that one's a little bit tougher. I do think that making anime or cartoons about the card games, kind of doing the effects that they have on field, such as if you do a Typhon mech anime, you see him just clear his area of things, which would be amazing. which you do see in the promotional material of that. You see him and Typhon kind of battling. That Typhon comes in and disrupts all of what Double A Zeus is doing. I think that would be the clear cut advantage to Konami and would pull in a bunch of new players. And now we get to the third point, the stores. The stores is somewhat like all of these are the most important, so it's hard to say which one is more important. I think the stores are kind of the most important, if not the second most important thing of this list and how to promote Yu-Gi-Oh! The stores must create a welcoming environment for Yu-Gi-Oh! What that means is that the owners and the employees must not participate in belittling Yu-Gi-Oh! There was a local game store that I used to go to where the owner didn't like Yu-Gi-Oh! And you could tell that he didn't like it. And the players could tell that he didn't like it. Where he actively talked bad about Yu-Gi-Oh! And poked fun about the misnomers that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has. While also saying to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, hey, why don't you try Magic? Why don't you play Magic? Play Magic, play Magic. Because that was his card shop kind of leaning towards. And he phased out Yu-Gi-Oh! Because he pushed everybody away and was asking where the Yu-Gi-Oh! Scene went. That is huge. You have to have a welcoming environment from the owners and the employees aspect of it. Next, they have to stock the Yu-Gi-Oh! Products the week that they release. This is not like Pokemon. This is not like Magic. This is not like Digimon or One Piece or anything else where you can just continually buying sets and putting them on the shelf and people will buy them. No, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a card game that you have to get it as early in as you can, because let's look at something like Burst Protocol, for example, upcoming. It comes out 2 weeks on the pre-release, 2 weeks before the 300th YCS, and on the overall release 1 week before. Players are going to be scrambling for cards, and I'm one of those players. I need my playset of Spenta, and I need my 2 copies of Fallen of the White Dragon and Ecclesia, and the new Ecclesia Synchro, I should say. But not having them on release, well, I'm not going to be interested. I am going to try to pull them as fast as I can, and if I don't, I will go and buy them on the secondary market through stuff like TCG Player, Card Cluster, and Tier 0 games and stuff such as. Next, the store owners must encourage play for Yu-Gi-Oh! This is kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, creating a welcoming environment. Welcoming environment is more like as it's already there. With encouragement of play for Yu-Gi-Oh! Is kind of if the scene is coming to the store. And like I said earlier, I'm going to come back and say there's one little tidbit about players, and this is where it goes in. If a local card shop does not have Yu-Gi-Oh! Or does not support it, show up and play. There is a game store right next to me. I do live in Michigan, and there's a game store right by MSU campus that doesn't support Yu-Gi-Oh! But over the weekend, it is open from Friday to Sunday, those 24 hours of Friday to Sunday. So you can show up whenever, get a group of friends, and just go there and start playing. This will allow the store owners to see, hey, there's a community here that I can get. Maybe they start now stocking products and stocking things that help out the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community, even if it's just as little as something like a Japanese size card sleeves. Also, the store owners and employees want to like ask questions. Why are you playing Yu-Gi-Oh? What is it about the game that you like? How can I make this more enticing to come play here? Because the more enticing you are to play at the store, the more you are likely to spend at the store. So it kind of helps the store out as well. But the store must have some knowledge of the card game. Yu-Gi-Oh being a big 3 card game, showing up to a game store and them having no knowledge of what's going on in the Yu-Gi-Oh community is kind of also a big red flag, and not wanting players to come there. Just having a little bit of knowledge of the new set coming out and a few cards in the new set, and asking, what do you think about X or Y? Say you go to this card store that I said that doesn't have any Yu-Gi-Oh products and doesn't seem to like Yu-Gi-Oh. You go there and you start playing, the store owner comes up. Hey, I heard there's a new set coming out in Burst Protocol. What do you think about the new Dark Lord support? Or something like that. This kind of now creates camaraderie against the two parties, the players and the store as an entity. This is fun and exciting and welcoming. And when you combine all of these fixes that I've laid out, the players must be welcoming and wanting to help new players. Konami releasing products that are easily pick upable and actually have the cards that people want, and the store owners stocking and being welcoming as well. You can create a thriving Yu-Gi-Oh community. However, we don't have that a lot of the time. You are sitting there with one of those, if that, which kills the Yu-Gi-Oh community. And it scrambles them, which makes it be, I have to travel an hour away to try to find a Yu-Gi-Oh locals. My recommendation to every player that wants to play Yu-Gi-Oh is get your friends that also play Yu-Gi-Oh, go to your local card shop and just play. This will see an influx in intrigue in the local scene of Yu-Gi-Oh, either inspiring older players that have since dropped the game for other games to come back and say, oh, I didn't know that game was still around. Do you got a spare deck? I also encourage players that are been around for a while, that are veteran players, to carry around multiple decks. And you might say, Josh, that's a little bit too much. I do think every player should carry around 2 high-powered modern decks. So in my case, I am carrying around Primite Odeon and Draco Tail, branded Draco Tail, and the Magistus Draco Tail with that. Branded Magistus Draco Tail, I guess you could say. And carry around 2 more beginner-friendly decks. I do carry these 2 around with Sword Soul and Trap Tricks, including in there a couple bad cards that don't really see a lot of play, but what it does is it kind of gets the new players to kind of look at them and be like, oh, well, this is a bad card, I should change that out for that, and kind of get them intrigued. And also about, you can have 2 to 4 decks of older formats. I'd say 2 of each. Say you have 2 Edison decks that are on similar levels and 2 Goat decks that are on similar levels. I feel like that would be the primary fix for a lot of things. Having new players come in, hey, I got this Blue Eyes deck that you can pilot, and I got this Dark Magician deck that I can play you against. Or, hey, you liked Edison, here's Edison, I got Blackwing against Lightsworn, and stuff such as. This is where, and I got I got 2 Chaos decks, but they function a little bit differently. One of them being more control, while the other one being like Chaos Warrior, while the other one being like Chaos Zombie. Where you see kind of the functionality of these decks and learn how to play through them. And having a fully completed deck that you generally don't care about, like how I said with Sword Soul or with trap tricks, I don't really care about these decks. I have multiple copies of all those cards, saying if a new player comes and likes the strategy or asks, hey, do you got a spare deck? I would say, yeah, here's Sword Soul, give me $5 and everything is yours, including the Ash Blossoms, the Imperms, and the Nibs that come with it. It sees that this player-friendly era, constantly helping players out by trading them cards they need and not ripping them off. The players, I think, are the first or second most important. They flop back and forth with these stores. Konami themselves is the lowest rung, even though a lot of people say that they should be the highest. It's the players and the storefronts. Those are the most important things to keep the community thriving. But that's my rant. Uh, Hopefully this will be up soon. I do have to edit a lot for this video, and I'm terrible at editing, so hopefully it will come out soon, within the next few days, hopefully before Burst Protocol is released. But for everybody that stuck around, please give me a like and subscribe on another topic that you would like me to talk about, or if you would disagree with my takes, post them down low. Please like and subscribe again, and thank you very much for watching. Until next time, peace.